Good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining us. I'm Gemma Comley, and I'm the Marketing Manager at Geiston. And today we're going to be talking about digital transformation. We're joined by Ric Hill, and he's going to be sharing his experience. I was going to say vast then, but I thought it might get me into trouble, of working on digital transformation projects. So he can share some of his experience so you can avoid some of the pitfalls. So we'll be sharing, we're recording this session and sharing the slides afterwards. And if you do have any questions, you can use the Q&A functionality at the bottom of the screen, and we'll get to those at the end. Okay, so I shall hand over to Ric now.
Thanks, Gemma. And welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Just to add to Gemma's welcome. So as Gemma said, I'm going to have a chat through some of the sort of top tips for digital transformation. I'll just try and share my screen now, get the right one. There we go. Hopefully you can see that rather than too much of my lockdown locks. Yeah, we're going to just have a walk through some common pitfalls and sort of main features of digital transformations, so that you can hopefully learn from some of the mistakes that others have made. Not all of them by me, but several. So first of all, a little bit about me for those of you who don't know me. Hello, I'm Ric. I am one of the founders of Geiston, along with my wife Emily, who now runs the company. So I now act as chairman for Geiston, helping out with a few things. And I also dip my hand into a few other local companies now. So as a part-time CTO and general sort of technical and business advisor. I guess my kind of particular area of interest is the overlap between technology and leadership. I love technology, but actually probably what fascinates me the most is getting people working brilliantly together. To that end, I also have quite a strong side interest in EOS, or the Entrepreneurial Operating System by Gino Wickman. If you're interested in that, or that piques your interest at all, let me know and get in touch, because we actually run a local meetup group, the Bristol EOS group. So it'd be great to see more people get involved in that. So that's a bit of an aside. Let's get back to digital transformation. And where better to start than at the beginning? So when it comes to a digital transformation, I encourage everyone to think in verbs rather than nouns. And what do we mean by that? Well, don't think of it as trying to create a thing. Think of it as trying to enable someone to do something, to perform an action. And it's that action, it's that thing that they're trying to perform that actually holds the value of the whole transformation in the first place. And that'll be based on some sort of need, desire, pain, or unfulfilled objective that someone's trying to achieve. And we need to go back to that root and that desire to achieve something, because that actually is the kernel of value that we're creating as part of the process. So to always try and think of that rather than the thing you're creating. Broadly speaking, I think there are two kinds of digital transformation. For the purposes of this talk, I'm going to talk about type 1 transformations as doing something new. So that is a new line of business, a new revenue stream, a whole new startup, but generally something that you haven't been doing before. So a new business venture attached to the technology. And type 2 transformation I'm going to refer to as, this is probably the more common reference for digital transformations, is doing things better. So improving things and the way you're doing it to kind of achieve some better aims. So often this starts from lots of paper-based processes or manual processes that you want to automate, that sort of stuff. For the type 1 transformation, the sort of first check to do at the beginning is to make sure that it's not a vanity project. And if you've been given this project by your CEO, it could be a slightly sensitive discussion to be had. But the main point is that you need to go back to that why at the beginning. Who wants to do something? Why do they want to do it? Where's the value in it? And just validate that there is actually value in doing that thing, and it's not just someone's great idea that's not actually so great. And in the case that you are doing a type 2 transformation, the main reason to go back to that why and that beginning is so that we don't get distracted by all the processes and systems that we currently have in place, because that's not what you want your starting point to be. You want your starting point to be the need and the desire to perform an action. If you start from where you are at the moment, you're likely to kind of carry forwards a lot of the mistakes and inefficiencies with you. You need to challenge all of that, throw away as much as possible, and pair it right back to that initial need. So where do we go after that initial check? Well, something that actually I think is underperformed by a surprisingly large number of organizations is to build a proper business case. And I really think this is the foundation for a successful transformation or any successful project, because it enables everyone to have the buy-in and to believe and see in the success that you're going to create. And it starts with a fundamental truth that you have to be generating more value than you're spending in resources. And that value is not necessarily just monetary as well. So this applies just as much to charities and not-for-profits as it does to traditional commercial enterprises. You just measure value differently. So you might measure value in social good rather than profit, for example. And obviously attached to this is a really big question about timeline. So are you looking for payback in 10 years? Is that fine? Do you have that sort of patience from your shareholders? Or must you see a return in a year? And that sort of timescale, how aggressive you need to be, does vary a lot from organization to organization. And this next one is probably my biggest tip for digital transformations, is that your business case must not relate to the status quo as it is today. It needs to relate to the status quo as it's going to be in the future. So doing nothing is often a very, very expensive mistake, essentially, to make. And we only need to look at the likes of Kodak and Blockbuster to sort of see that being true. So, Blockbuster had a very good video rental industry, video rental business, and it didn't keep up with the Netflix and the like, and we all know where that story went. So we need to think about where you're likely to end up if you don't do anything, as well as kind of where you are now. And that does usually involve being overtaken by your competition. So if you stand still, everyone else goes in front of you. And this is actually where I see a lot of business cases only stack up when you include this, but they don't just stack up a little bit, they stack up enormously. It's the case that we spend all this money to do a digital transformation. Actually, on the face of it, we don't get much gain, but if we don't do it, we're lost. We completely get lost by overtaken by the competition. And my third tip here is about confidence over precision. So think about all the numbers that you come up with, what their confidence interval is. It's very good having a business case that's all the way down to the penny, but the one thing is that those pennies aren't going to be right. So how far are they likely to be off? And which assumptions that you're making, and which lines in the business case actually carry the most leverage and make the most effect on the model? Because you'll probably find that one or two things will really make it very volatile. So it might be customer take up, it might be costs in some cases, but what you'll find is that there's one that has a lot more leverage over the end result than another. And for type 1 transformations in particular, so that's doing something new, I very, very strongly recommend a design sprint a la Google type approach, or a discovery phase as some call it, before you even start committing to a business case particularly strongly, because the output of those is exactly confidence. You're not doing it for any other reason really, other than to just gain confidence in your business case and to know where you're going. And the difference that it can make to your confidence level is enormous. It can take you from a finger in the air, a stab in the dark, to actually a pretty solid feeling that you're going to do something great or nothing of any significance to your business. And generally speaking, when you're thinking of those sort of reasons to go ahead with a project, it falls into three sort of categories, I think. For type 2 transformations, that's the improvements. You're working from a status quo base. So you're generally looking to reduce costs and improve quality are often in that list. For the type 1 transformations, it's all about increasing value as a new venture. Most often I see all three of these kind of feature as factors in motivators to doing a digital transformation, but for some it falls very squarely in one of the three over the other two. It does just vary. So we have a business case. Next challenge is build a team. So the first question here is, do you want internal staff or external staff? And because you're going to need some people, that goes without saying. These things don't happen on their own. And I would say you definitely need some internal people. You can't just outsource a digital transformation. It's just impossible, because the whole point of a transformation is you're transforming a business. So if you don't have people in that business on that journey, very, very closely involved in it, it's never going to take root and actually be successful. So the question is more around, do you want external people? And if you do, what kind of people? I suggest that usually you do, and there's two reasons for that. One is, by definition, you haven't done this before. It's a new venture, and there are people out there who are likely to be much more experienced and familiar with the process and what you're trying to do. So you'll get a much higher level of expertise by looking externally. And the second is that this is a process that you're going to go through, and yes, you want to do continual improvement out the back of it, but there is definitely a temporary demand associated with a digital transformation. You transform from one thing to another, you keep improving on that from the end, but there's this one period in which you're really doing a lot of work that isn't permanent. So hiring people and having internal people dedicated to that means that they might be sort of twiddling their thumbs a bit by the end of it. So if you are bringing external people in, the next question is, do you look at individuals or organizations? And I would say, if you know the right individuals and you trust them and you can find them easily, then absolutely go for it. They tend to work out cheaper. Bringing people into the organization or into the team for a transformation is all about trust. So if you have trusted individuals that are on tap, then that's brilliant. But I would caution against going out and finding a load of individuals, because it's a lot of hard work to find the right people, and they might not be any good. And having that level of confidence and trust of bringing the right people in is really difficult when, by definition, you haven't brought these people in before. So that's the appeal of bringing organizations in, really, is so that they can bring a lot to the table quickly and can fulfill a big spread of roles and generally provide a more integrated sort of team solution from the get-go. But obviously that does come at a slightly higher cost initially. The next thing on this list is to select qualitatively, not quantitatively. And by that, I mean, get to know people, build a relationship, find out what it would be like to work with them. The value of cultural fit and trust are just way beyond actually the specific nitty-gritties of particular skill sets and technologies. Working effectively with someone is really, really crucial to the success of the project. So think about finding people that you're going to get on with, and you should enjoy it as well. So it should be an enjoyable process to go through a digital transformation. If it feels painful dragging people along through treacle, you've got the wrong people. You should have a culture within the whole wider team of being able to solve problems together and drive yourselves forwards. One way to look at these things as well is to think about how people approach things rather than particular experience in an area. So essentially, you want problem solvers because that's what you're doing in a digital transformation. So what's the process for solving a problem that someone follows? How do they react to changes and to evolutions in the project lifecycle and that sort of stuff. And one particular thing about technology is that there's always many ways to skin a cat. So you shouldn't get hung up on particular technologies early on in the process. You should think about actually a track record of solving problems in an effective way, and look for the skill sets associated with that, rather than think, oh, this is a X technology, maybe it's an Oracle or an SAP problem or something like that, and you sort of head off straight down that route. The chances are actually it's a generic business problem, and there are lots of tools that you can use to solve it. So don't get fixed on one too early. And the third point here is value over cost. So it's self-evident when you think about it, but actually, you should be looking to get value out of people, not get low-cost people. And this is so true in the technology sphere, where one great person is literally worth 10 mediocre ones. So you can have 10 times productivity differences between team members on technical teams. And that's just enormous and so quickly outweighs the difference in day rates. So do look at that as a guide of kind of actually how much are people going to achieve, and what are we getting done per pound, rather than how many hours am I getting per pound. So we have a team. The next challenge is to get them working effectively together. And as I sort of hinted at before, that collaborative, cultural fit, good way of working will have such a huge impact on the project that you can't really imagine that before. When you see a team that's humming and working well together, you can just tell at first glance that they're achieving so much more in the same amount of time. So how do we achieve this? Well, I always like to align incentives wherever possible, and this is particularly tricky in a lot of cases, but I think it can reap huge benefits. If you can manage it contractually, then all the better. So basically, if one person wins, everyone should win. Or if the team wins, everyone should win. That's a great way to go, just to keep people pulling in the same direction. Because if we all have that same definition of success and we're all aiming at the same goalpost, then we're all going to be working more effectively. And on a similar vein, it's good to couch all goals in that sense. So I always set my team's goals to achieve as a team rather than goals to achieve as individuals, because it fosters that atmosphere where if one person's struggling to hit the things that they need to, they'll actually speak out and get a lot of support from the others in the team, because the rest of the team recognizes that the way they contribute in those moments is to support the person who's struggling, not to just put their hands up and say, well, I did my bit, and point the finger at the other person. So by couching everything as team goals, it automatically shows everyone that actually you need to support the person who's struggling the most, and everyone needs to rally together to achieve things from the bottom. This is a particularly tricky one in the current era, encouraging communication, and I find it's really being turned on its head at the moment by actually not being able to see people enough in real life. Obviously, you can see me now place than we would have been 10 years ago when all this stuff was in its infancy, but it's not the same, and I think we need to recognize that, and we need to put a huge emphasis on the personal interactions, and that's not just shoving people in a room together or a virtual room together and expecting stuff to happen. It's actually fostering genuine interactions where people talk to each other as people and make friendships and bond, and actually create a desire to help each other out, which is essentially what you're aiming for. And meetings can be, you think meetings are kind of the important thing to foster communication, but actually they can be the death of it. If you have a lot of people in meetings, they don't have any time to get any work done, and that is a constant source of complaining. But also, too many meetings with too many people means that there's a lot of people hardly contributing to those meetings. And I've sadly sat through far too many meetings where, you know, there've been one or two people in there who have said a few words at most throughout the whole thing. And, you know, why were they there? Either you make a real effort to be inclusive of everyone who's in the room, or you cut down the number of people who are in the room, and often it's the latter. So I would always encourage more smaller meetings, and lots of ad hoc communication and sort of taps on the shoulder, and those are the ones that are really hard right now. To foster an environment where people will just do the virtual tap on the shoulder. Can I ask you about something? Can we, you know, throw some ideas around by this, grab a whiteboard? You know, that's hard now. So working on that needs some deliberate effort. The next one on here is something that people who saw my last Guston breakfast talk just before lockdown will be familiar with, and that's about making responsibilities clear. So by knowing exactly what everyone in the team is doing, we achieve two clear goals. One is that first of all, we know where to go or who to go to for any particular problem that we have. If we need a decision made about this, if we need some help with that, you know, if something's holding us up, then we know who to go to and we can find the right person. So having really clear responsibilities throughout the whole team makes that really easy to do. And the second reason I think is also just as important is that by knowing what someone else is doing and what their responsibilities are, that automatically generates a certain level of respect for that person's contribution. I can see how everyone in the team is helping us reach our collective goals. And it's a sad fact of human nature that we will assume that someone's contribution is sort of null or not valuable if we don't know what they're doing. And you can see that all over the place. So generate some awareness of what other people's responsibilities are and what people are doing and how they're contributing to the goal, and it really helps the collaborative atmosphere in a team. And the final one on here is another problem that I see far too often, unfortunately, in technical organisations is discipline-based sub-teams. So what I mean by that is I see a design team in an organization, a QA team in an organization, an ops team or a DevOps team in an organization. And then what you see is work being passed from one team to another team to another team. And then finally it might get out into the wild. I find that really frustrating. I know the people in the teams find them frustrating. It leads to a very us and them attitude and a certain level of detachment. You know, one team will say, well, we did our bit, that team messed up. You know, it can lead to some finger pointing like that. A far better solution, if you've got a big team and you need to split it up, is to go cross discipline. So that within one team you have everything you need to get all the way from ideation through to realization. So you put in the same team the BA, design, development, QA, DevOps capacity, all in there together, working as one team, so that they can have full responsibility for actually delivering stuff right from inception to real life use. And that's, you know, proved throughout the industry to be absolutely the best way of working. But there's still a surprisingly large number of organizations that are not operating that way. Next tip, five out of 8. So we're over halfway. This is really just an agile mantra, is that don't define what you're trying to do up front, refine as you go. And there's so many reasons for this. I could do a whole talk on kind of the benefits of this particular bit of agile very easily. So I'm kind of hoping that you accept that this is a good way to go, because you will learn throughout your projects and your transformation. So allow yourself to do that. And how you're going to learn is from your user base. So keep them close. This is how you gain the knowledge of how to do things better. User testing is basically the only way to gain confidence in how it's going to go down when you release it. So why would you not do that earlier on? Why would you keep yourself in the dark about how this is going to be received until the very end of a project? When you look at it in that way, it just seems madness. So get your users involved, get their feedback as soon as you can, and keep them as part of that process. And this sort of seems obvious when you think about it, but it's amazing how it's forgotten at the beginnings of projects sometimes. So expect change. You will learn. It's an absolutely self-evident thing that you get more knowledge as you go. That's just life. And I think someone once told me there's three certainties in life: death, taxes, and scope change. And I think this is really it. As people learn more, they will have better ideas, and you have to make sure that you're in a position where you can actually use those better ideas and they don't cost you. You should be able to adapt and absorb them into what you're doing without having to have nasty contractual negotiations and reset expectations with all your stakeholders and so on. It should just be part of your natural process to absorb and adapt to ideas as they come out. And the last one is something that a lot of people talk about, and to allow people to get it wrong, and to sort it out afterwards. So sticking to a bad idea can be very, very expensive. If you know something's bad, then you can stop doing it straight away and save yourself all that effort of development, testing, deploying it into the world, the comms associated with it, the bad press. There's so many, there's so much negative follow-on from going down the wrong route, that if you can stop yourself early, switch track and go on to something else, then you're going to save yourself a huge amount of time, effort, and money. So fail fast is the lean startup mentality, but it's not just fail fast as in a whole big idea. Think of it on a small scale too. So each particular thread of functionality or feature, test it and fail it quickly. Don't let it go a long way down the road. It can apply to really small ideas as well as the big picture. And I don't know if we've got any financial people on the call, but this is one of the bugbears of all the financiers out there, is that sadly IT projects are very prone to spiraling costs, and we all hear about it and we all know about it. I think the only one that comes close is probably building work, and a lot of us have suffered that. So there's a reason for that, though. It is because technology carries risk. We're generally trying to do something new, and that because we're trying to do something new, we don't know how it's going to turn out. We're not just carbon cutting something and doing the same thing over and over again. Each time we're doing something new. It's a new business that we're doing it to. It's a new combination of technologies. There's always news in there. And that does mean that we have an innate high level of risk. So what do we do about that? Does that just mean we're doomed? Well, I suggest not. And I think the solution is to allow a certain level of flexibility without permitting things to run away. So contrary to popular belief, I posit that we can be agile with either a small or a capital A, and nimble while actually working under a fixed cost. And the way we achieve this, it's quite simple really. all we do is we say, this is the amount to the team as a whole, this is the amount of resource and time you have to solve this business problem. Go away and solve it as best you can. And it's as simple as that. You limit the extent of the resources and the time that you allow, and you leave it up to the team to work out the best solution. And then everyone's bought into the same route. We all know that we've got this business outcome we want to achieve. We all know how long we've got to do it and how much money we've got to do it. And we're all aligned to achieve the best result that we possibly can. And that is obviously contrary to saying this is the thing that I want you to build. And this is now going back to the why, to the very first tip. It's about starting with what we're trying to achieve and why we're doing it and what the goal is, and not starting with an idea of a product to build. So as long as everything is focused on that why and the general goal of the project, then we don't need to worry about the specifics of it. We can allow that to change. We can allow the precise scope and feature set and features and everything to move around throughout the project, reacting to what is actually going to be best for the business or the organization at the end of the day. So I find that so simply easy to understand, and yet it's amazing how the idea just doesn't kind of gel with so many people, that people think of fixed cost and fixed scope, and then they think the only alternative to that is a free for all. But I really don't think it is the case. And the last point here is going back to sort of the second point of my is to keep looking at that business case. So the business case shouldn't be something you do at the beginning and just give it a tick and then move on and go and do the project, even though that's how I tend to find they get used. You should be going back and validating that every time. So you are learning throughout this whole process. And in particular, you're learning about the benefits and how they're evolving. So you're getting a clear idea from your user testing, how people are going to react to it, how much value it's going to carry for them, what the general level of engagement can be expected to be. So you should be taking that new information, feeding it back into your business case and checking again and again. Are we still doing the right thing here? Is this still a goer? And building a framework where actually, based on that evolving business case, ideally the board will have such buy-in to the undertaking that you can regularly assess whether actually it needs to be expanded or completely canned. And those should be open options, if possible, throughout the whole process. The penultimate one is another Agile mantra. So build iteratively. Anyone who knows anything about Agile knows that this is kind of where it is all about. And it all starts with getting something of genuine value out into real use as early as you possibly can. So for your typical type 2 transformation of doing things better, often this is targeting one specific part of the process. And it's actually really easy to do in this kind of environment. You generally have an organizational process that has many steps. Might be a few, might be dozens. In a complex environment, it could even be hundreds. Just pick one and actually improve that one and get it out, and then improve the next one and get it out, and work out a way of going through the whole transformation piecemeal, so that each time you're improving one bit and putting it out into the world and learning, bringing that knowledge back, and then doing the next one, and just growing it out like that. But you need to start with that first piece of low-hanging fruit where you can actually get something out and into use and delivering value as early as you possibly can. And the consequences of that are huge. The business confidence improves, the user buy-in improves, the learning level improves. There's just so many ancillary benefits involved in this process. So when you put it out there, obviously you need to get that information back. So you need to be doing that user testing and finding out how the idea and the evolution is sitting in the real world. And you've got to plan for this process. So you've got to plan when you start an undertaking like this. You've got to plan slots for actually taking this out to people and really asking them, if it solves their problems, and finding that information out and feeding that back in, and allowing flexibility so that you can not only go out but bring the knowledge back in as well. And once you start on that path, it's crucial to stay on that path. And in terms of risk management, going back to the finances and the people who sort of worry about risk and spend, this is the golden chalice, right? So if we always have something that is of value and can be used by people, and we're just growing that incrementally out, if the whole team went under a bus, then in a traditional waterfall environment, you would go.
Oh, I think we've lost Ric there at the moment.
And then if we stop at any point, we've not really lost anything. Whereas that long flat one with a big spike at the end, you stop just before the end, you've lost a lot. So final point 8 is about spreading love. So I think it's sometimes too easy to forget why we're doing things. So we remembered it at the beginning. It's just to solve this user need and to actually deliver things. But so it's all about the users, the people who are actually going to leverage the technology that we're creating. And we need to keep them in the project all the way through. I've sort of harped on about this several times, but having those real users involved early helps you learn, as I said. But the other massive benefit from it is that these people then become your advocates. These are the people who will go out into the organization and espouse and evangelize about all the fantastic things that it's going to bring and how it's going to make everyone's lives better. So those are the people you really need to cling on to and keep close to you and use as allies throughout the whole process. And one of the key ways a lot of those people will get involved is as your future trainers. So I very firmly believe in the process of train the trainer over hiring a bunch of external people to train. I mean, there is an adage that good software doesn't need training, but usually the business processes need a bit of guidance. So the best way I think to go about this is to use those advocates within the organization that you've had close to you, super users you might call them, subject matter experts, however you want to describe them. Those people that are kept close to the project throughout, they're the ones who should then be going out into the organization and training the others, because the others will see that this person does their job, they understand me, they know what I'm trying to achieve, they'll feel a lot more empathy with them, and it will generally just lead to a much better outcome where everyone in the organization then becomes more effectively bought into it, and there's fewer people trying to circumvent things and work around them, and everyone will tend to be working with the system a little bit better. So that's it, my eight tips. There's a little summary. If anyone has any questions, please do raise your digital hand, and also if you'd like to chat through any of this stuff with me later on, I'm always very, very welcome to have conversations about this. I'm feeling lonely in lockdown, so I always want a conversation.
Poor Ric. You like to talk digital transformation even out of lockdown, let's be honest. Thank you for that. That was really interesting. I think it's always good to see like the whole process of digital transformation and to see that there is the process behind it. I think it's good that it's not just this concept that people talk about. It's good to kind of see some of the mechanics behind it. We do have a question that's come through. So building iteratively, I can never say that word, it's good in theory, but it can be difficult in type 2 projects. where any increment need to access data from the old system. The two options here would appear to either be to build a temporary integration or to duplicate data entry, neither which are attractive. Have you got any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so well, it's hard to say without the details of the specifics, but I think the core problem that's probably being referred to here is data mastery. So one place has to be the master data source, and duplicating that is, I agree, problematic and difficult. And dangerous, but often you can look to other areas to actually have the essentially dual running. So the use of an effective service-oriented sort of architecture with distributed interconnected parts can work quite well here, because you can potentially re-engineer the front end of one part of the process while still maintaining the back end in the old system. So that's a bit of a woolly answer, but I think you need to think of creative ways to start making some improvements where we're keying into the old. So working out parallel running, I think, is a really tough challenge, and it can often seem at the outset like parallel running is just an extra cost, an extra overhead, but and when you lay it out as all the tasks you need to do, it seems like you're doing more. But I would suggest that often it is worth it for two reasons. One is reduction of risk, and the other is the learning and the reactiveness that it enables you to achieve. So having two systems that link to each other and synchronize with each other and feed data in and out of one another is more work to do initially, but it is a lower risk transformation. You avoid the big bang approach, which, as everyone says, the only thing you guarantee with a big bang is a big bang. So it allows that sort of incremental approach and reduces risk, but it also has that real learning benefit of being able to pick stuff in earlier. So seems like a more expensive, more difficult solution, but my experience is that it actually delivers benefit at the end of the day.
Great, I hope that's answered the question. We've had another question that's come through, and it's around digital transformation during this current crisis. Do you think there's any benefits to kind of getting started now?
That's a good question, and I'd say absolutely yes. And there's a particularly good reason for this at the moment, I think, which is that right now, with the way that we're forced to work, it's really eking out a lot of the problems in our old systems and processes. So it's exposing and making it really obvious where the manual processes are, where the reliance on bits of paper are, and we're starting to learn right now, much more than we have been able to in the past, where actually the faults in our processes are. So it's a really good time to identify your quick wins and where to start, and some of the kind of vulnerabilities you're currently exposed to. So I think it's a great time to start, because you've got this kind of huge awareness of it. Obviously, starting is actually building the business case. It might be doing some of those design sprints, some of those discovery phases, and now's great, because we're actually in a really high learning atmosphere right now. Even though it's hard to collaborate, we're in a really high learning atmosphere, and hopefully we'll all be able to go back to some sort of new normal, whatever that is, quite soon. But we can't stand still. And from a more macroeconomic perspective, I think it's the case that those who invest in a downturn tend to come out really, really strong, with all guns blazing when you come out the other side. And the sort of gain you can make into your market and the business growth that you can experience when you've done that investment period in the downtime is huge. And now's a great time to find the right people as well. Going back to the people point, there's I've with one of the organisations I'm involved with, we've hired 6 people over the course of the downturn, and it's been great. You know, tech is really hard to find normally, and we kind of had our pick of the crop, and it's been so much easier than we've ever had recruitment before. So yeah, I think there's lots of reasons to be going now. Lots of reasons.
Yeah, I think that certainly reflects some of the conversations we've been having. And it's good to hear that there's a positive from this crisis, even if we're finding recruitment easier. I think we've got another question that's come through. Just bear with me. Okay, so what are your thoughts on testing in a new normal when new behaviours and working models are still evolving?
That's a good question. So you've obviously got to do it. But also, doesn't that mean it's kind of the best time to be testing, because we're learning a lot now.
Yeah.
I guess the problem that's being hinted at here is that when we don't know exactly where we're going to be, how do we know whether we're testing the right thing for what that's going to be? And I think that's a valid question, and something we need to be aware of when we're operating. But the best we can do is to test to how we know at the moment, and any learning to that extent is good learning. But
yeah,
there might also be an undertone to this question about kind of the mechanics of it and how we actually do user testing in particular. So if that was part of the question, which I'll answer it in case. There are lots of tools out there to do remote user testing, so I think we just need to leverage those. Generally speaking, a lot of the process is the same. So the recruitment side of it is pretty much the same. You know, you can still find people that you can't go to a coffee shop and do that kind of user testing. So that one's harder. But most of the other kinds of user testing, you know, the traditional find the right person through a recruitment partner or directly through your network or however, that's still the same. How you walk through it, well, you can't be in a room with them that easily at the moment, but you can actually, a lot of the laboratory based testing, you kind of do it over video link, and people are just being watched and stuff anyway, so a lot of that can be really similar. So you just need to try and use the bits which we always have used, which still work, and just try and use those over and above the ones that we can't do right now, like going into coffee shops.
Brilliant. I think that's it for today, because I think we're slightly running over. So thank you very much to everyone for joining us and for some really good questions there at the end. Thank you, Ric, for your presentation. That was really good. And we shall be sharing the slides and the recording later this afternoon. Hope to see you all soon. Bye.
Right. Thanks, everyone.